So welcome back to this video series on how to build a custom lightsaber. This is my first one, and as you've seen in the other videos, kind of been trying to go over everything as we kind of go through the build in hopes that if you are in the market to build your own lightsaber, considering it or in the process of doing so, it may help you guys out a little bit on being able to understand more on how to do that. So in the prior videos, you've seen where we've gone over the different parts that we've gotten, what we're going to be installing, what the hopes are behind the goal, the end-all goal of how the lightsaber is going to work and what pieces we're putting in there. In the second video you saw, we actually went into where we prepped the pieces. We prepped the motherboard, the soundboard as it's called, the power board, the Bluetooth, got some things prepped and ready to start wiring up. And now we've actually gone into the part where we've actually done some of the wiring. I had some footage on there that unfortunately did not work out the way that I wanted them to be able to get you guys the video footage of the actual soldering and connecting of the wiring and the components and everything. But we are going to go over that today. I'm going to kind of show you what we've gotten into, what I've done, what worked and what didn't work, and move forward with that. So let's go ahead and take a look at those pieces, and I can show you exactly how I've got everything wired up. We'll talk about what did and didn't work. So let's look at those on the other camera now. So looking here, I know this looks like a big mess, but we're going to go over exactly what we've got here because I've actually pretty much done the build. Unfortunately, with those other videos not working, I couldn't really go too much in depth on what did and didn't work, but we're going to talk about that stuff now. So the first thing here is, if you guys remember, in the last video I talked about this USB-C connection. I wanted to try to set this up to where not only could I charge with it, but could also do the data transfer, so that I didn't have to take the whole lightsaber apart. Now unfortunately that did not work out the way that I wanted it to. I guess mainly because on the back side, and as you can see, I've taken those wires loose. Those pins that I had in here that were wired up for that purpose evidently are not connected inside the USB-C itself, because no matter what I did, I could not get the computer to recognize the lightsaber. I could plug directly into the soundboard right here in the USB micro, and it worked perfectly fine. It would recognize it every single time, whether I launched it with the device manager to make sure that it was recognizing it properly, or did the drivers or whatever. It did not matter. It would work perfectly fine connected here, but no matter what I tried, would not work with this. So unfortunately, this port is only going to be used as a charging port. The switch did work properly. Everything worked fine there as far as being able to activate it and operate everything properly. Now, I did have to rearrange a little bit the components themselves that I was going to put in here, basically because of space. I ran into an issue with spacing and being able to get everything to fit where I wanted it to. So one of the things you'll notice is my power board that's here, this being the board that not only powers through the battery, but charges the battery on the board going through the switch. I had to actually install this way up here in the front, and it sits snugly right here in this area behind the PCB pogo pin board connection that's there for the blade. And when I put everything back together, you'll see exactly how that all goes. So I had to kind of redo some things with that, because also I didn't have any room for the kill switch. So with the fact that I couldn't put the kill switch in here, I knew I was going to have to take the battery out, otherwise I'd kill the battery all the time. It just made it where it wasn't feasible with the switch not working, the power switch, and charging port, to be able to make that work the way that I wanted it to. I ended up going with the smaller USB, which this particular USB is the BT630. That's in the parts list that's down in the description on there. I had to go with this one just because of spacing. With these LGT sabers, there's not a lot of space to be able to put any extra stuff in there once you start building it like I was hoping it would. So, you know, some of the other builds that you may do, like one of the Anakin styles, or one of the other ones that you may get from, like, you know, some of the other larger saber building companies out there that you can buy parts from, that are multiple buttons, not just a single button like the LGT is, but the multiple button type of lightsabers. We have 2 and 3 buttons. You have pressure sensitive and different things like that. Those, there may be more room inside their chassis, especially the ones like that you would go in and put like a crystal chamber or something like that in there. So it wasn't able to do the kill switch like I wanted to. So unfortunately, it does make it to where I have to pull the battery out whenever I'm not using it. So it just didn't make any sense. So I went ahead and eliminated the kill switch to be able to make the room. Use the smaller US or a Bluetooth adapter on there, and put my, like I said, put my power board up here in the top. Now I did solder all of the connections, and I know that I had a message the other day from one of the subscribers and one of the followers on Facebook was concerned about the actual soldering ports, you know, being able to go in and do the soldering. And you see that everything that I've done, and I'll show you here, all the soldering I've done has been on the back side. So everything's soldered through the back side of the board, so that way it has a clean look. But I know you're looking at the board probably thinking to yourself, if you've never done a lightsaber build, it's like, oh my gosh, what are all those connections? What are all those ports for? You know, how am I going to know where exactly everything goes? That's a great question. Well, Fredrik's, that actually is the one that developed the Proffieboard, has a website that you can go to, and that link will be down in the description below. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that website, and I'm going to show you exactly what we're looking at and what kind of information that's going to give you. So as you can see here, this is for the Proffieboard 2. Okay, Proffieboard 2 on here. Of course, you've got the stupid ads that are in the way. But on this page, when you go to his lightsaber, the website that he has here for the Proffieboard, it's going to give you all sorts of information. So it shows you the Proffieboard itself. In here, you're going to have all sorts of links for information. You know, for CC sabers, TXQ sabers, 89 sabers, LGT and Dark Wolf sabers, stuff for the patch store. So these are all going to be different sites that you can go to that will give you the ability to buy some of the parts you may be looking for. But it's going to also go in here and tell you what exactly you're going to need. Of course, you're going to have your Proffi V2.2 board, which is what we're looking at down here in this picture. It's going to tell you kind of wire you're going to need, all the different pieces that you need, your software, if you're going to do Bluetooth add-on, if you're putting in optional LED display, you know, or LCD display or whatever. You know, you've got all these different parts that it tells you what exactly you're going to need. And then this section actually gives you your pin out section. So this will give you a layout of all the pins, as you can see here, what they all do, from your SD power, your data, your transmit and your receive ports, which are used for your Bluetooth connection, your different data ports, different voltage ports. You got a 3.3 and a 5 volt on there. Your positive battery connection, so that way you know where your positive battery is going to go. Your main ground and battery ground over here on this side, which this port section here, this is all linked together. And then you also have a ground over here, which is your negative for your battery that you can use, which is what I did. I used my negative battery on this side here as no, I'm sorry. I think I did, you know, all my negative, all my ground and my battery is here on mine. My bad. You got a couple LED ports on here. You got your button connection port. So if you have a single button configuration, you solder here. If you've got 2 button configuration, it goes here. And then you've got your LED connections that you have on there based on whether or not you've got you know, a single LED connection, you've got multiple LED connections, single blade if you've got the pulling blades like your Kylo Ren's. You know, if you've got LEDs that are accent LEDs, so if you're going to have one that's like on the bottom where your speaker's at, if you have a crystal chamber, stuff like that, that gives you, you know, the locations for all the different ports. And then it gives you a description here, as you can see along the side here, what all those ports are going to do. Now, here's where it gets good. This is where this particular resource is really going to help you out, because it's all drop down. It's all drop down. You can go in here and play with the configuration based on what you're going to do. So for instance, I've got NeoPixel on mine. So it's 144 LEDs, RGB. It's not the zigzag design. So I've got the drop down here for the NeoPixel. Now, if you had additional lights or LEDs in there, you know, you got your dual or accent lights. So if you're going to have the ones that are going to be, like I said, base down to the base by the speakers or something like that. If you're going to have a crystal chamber, that's where those are going to go. Your cross guards. If you have a star dual or star cross guard on there, based on the design that you're doing, you've got drop downs for each one of those. And then you have the same thing here. You got your crystal chamber or accent lights, and for different crystal chamber connections. And what you'll notice is if you click any of these, so let's just say I was going to put a NeoPixel, you know, crystal chamber or accent light on there. When you click that, you'll notice on here that it added this entire LED strip, shows you what ohm resistor you need to put in line, and then shows you here and here where your connections are going to go on that board. So that way you'll know exactly where you're going to connect to. So when you take that off, you'll notice here then that section is gone, and you have your basic connections. So for me, I don't have a momentary button second. I only have one single momentary button. I don't have a latch. I don't have a touch. Touch button is like the ones where you can just touch it and it'll come on. It's touch sensitive. On there, you've got your latching button, which is the, you know, the click on, click off style buttons, and then your momentary button, which is what this switch is. So I'll leave it there. You can pick on there, you know, click on there if you're going to have an OLED display. I have the Bluetooth adapter, so I'm going to click for the Bluetooth to add. If you're going to have IR receiver, if you're going to add a kill switch in, it'll add on there, as you can see here, where you wire in your kill switch for that. If you're going to do a reverse orientation, if you want to do something different like that, you can do that. Your kill switch, you know, I didn't put mine in there, so I take that off. So based on the design of what I'm doing, here is my layout. This is the way that mine is wired. So I got my speaker connections here on these ports. I've wired up my LEDs, which is the main power LED right here, and I'll show you that here in a second. On the other camera, you got my switch here where the main power to the switch is at the ground. You've got your power going to your battery from there, and also the power to the board, which ties in also with your LED power. And then this purple line here, this is your LED data line. So if you're looking at your LEDs when you're going to wire up your PCB, and you'll notice on mine when I show you, I've got a green wire there. That's the data wire. So that data wire is the one that will tell the LEDs what they're supposed to do. So that wire's up here. Then my Bluetooth here, I've got my power Bluetooth. I got my ground going to here. And then I have the two greens on my receive and transmit. I'm going to be really specific with this on this Bluetooth connection, because you can really make it where it's hard to get this to work if you don't wire this thing properly. And that is your receive and transmit lines. You have to make sure you wire these right. Even though I worked in the data industry for a long time, completely brain farted on there. And remember, I mentioned about shorting out my motherboard or my soundboard and having to do a second one in the first video I did. That was how I did it. I actually wired it wrong, went to go back to try to fix this, shorted the board out. So make sure that you have your transmit of the main board going to the receive side of the Bluetooth, and then your receive of the main of your Bluetooth, or your transmit your Bluetooth to your receive. So you have to go transmit to receive, then receive to transmit. So that way the two devices can talk. If you don't do it, if you go transmit to transmit, receive to receive, basically you got two devices yelling at each other and nobody's hearing anything. So that's what you have to make sure that you wire those two right, so that in a later video that you'll see, I'll show you how the Bluetooth feature works on the app that I'm using on my phone. So then you got your speaker connections here, that you have your positive, negative on the speakers, and you see there's two green lines, so it doesn't tell you on here which one is positive and negative. So you have to look here just where this battery ground is at. You scroll back up, and your battery ground, you see it right there is your speaker positive, speaker negative. So when you're looking down your config, speaker positive, speaker negative. So it's going to give you a complete layout of exactly how you have to wire everything up for it to work properly. So I recommend when you go to do your build, go to the site here, put the information in, get your build designed the way it's supposed to be done, and screenshot it. So that way you have a screenshot of exactly how your build is supposed to be. That's what I did. I've actually got it in a folder on my other computer screen over here to be able to look at, so that way I knew as I was doing it exactly how my build was supposed to be. The other thing is, and I will actually put a link for it as well, is how you're going to wire everything up with your Bluetooth. All right, so here is the Bluetooth information that we are going to use, and it shows you the two different chipsets that are in this. So these two chipsets, depending on which one you go with, one's of course larger than the other. The larger one does have a stronger antenna, but I can tell you, I've been standing a few feet away from my lightsaber. I've handed it to my wife. She's been standing a few feet from me, and it works perfectly fine. So if you're concerned about how close it sets, because it says for the smaller one, I believe it says that you're supposed to be within like 30 inches from it for it to work properly. The other one's like 4 feet that you can get away from it, and it worked perfectly fine. I was further away than that with the smaller one, and it worked perfectly fine there. But it's going to go in, and you'll see here, oops, let me do it this way. It'll tell you some information on there. If you're not very good into coding and you're not able to go in and figure out a way to connect this board to your computer, I recommend going with a smaller one, because the smaller one, being the BT630 right here, already comes preset to be able to work. All you have to do is wire it. You run the app on it to be able to set up the Bluetooth on there to connect to your phone. You're good to go. You don't have to go through a whole bunch of crap to be able to get the thing to work right, which is what you would have to do with the 909, which is the larger one, to make it work. So I abandoned using the 909 because I found out I really didn't need that. Down here in the wiring area, you've got your wire configuration right here. Let me pull this over so you can see. So it shows you which connections are your receive and transmit, your external antenna if you wanted to put a larger antenna on it. The ground right here, you don't really need to worry about anything on this side unless you're going to put a status LED on it to show that you're connected to Bluetooth or not, which once you run the app, you'll know if you're connected or not. You don't need an LED to be able to operate that. All you really need to worry about are the connections on this side of the board, on the antenna side of the board. Your transmit, your receive, your voltage, which is going to go to that 3.3 volt connection on the board, and then your ground, okay, your negative ground. So this is all that you need right here to be able to wire up the adapter itself. Now this here does tell you other wiring configurations if you wanted to wire it up with a mini off and on switch, so if you wanted to be able to turn it on and off. If you wanted to actually add in the LEDs So this resource, which I'll put on there, has all that information on there. Also has on here if you're going to hook it up to a crystal focus board, where to connect everything for the crystal focus to work. If it's the CFX, the CFV9 has got that, the CF8, and then of course your prism is here. So this doesn't have information on it specifically for the Profi, but I can assure you, if you stick with what's on this page here and wire it up the way that it says in this configuration, it will work perfectly fine. So let's go ahead and go back to look at the lightsaber itself again. The Bluetooth sits down here. You can see I've only got the one side wired up, connecting to the board itself. My speaker down here in the bottom, my ground connection down here on this end, my positive here. Now, one of the things I've done is my LED, or the PCB board where the pogo pins, I have the main power for that wired directly to the port or the connection point for the battery, mainly because the actual connections on the board itself, the holes are rather small. So if you're trying to put multiple wires in those holes, they are not going to fit. So I figured that was a good enough junction point in there to tie those connections all together. Also, I have the wire, as you can see, coming from my charging board and power board tied into that same point. So through that connector, I charge my battery. I also power my board through there and operate my switch as well. Also powers my LEDs as far as the main power to the LEDs. Then the main power that turns on and off to show that the LEDs are operational. Once you turn the switch on, they're connected to the LED ports here on the board, indicating where exactly they're going to go, just like we showed on that diagram before. And then this is the green data line that I was talking about. Now, I did try, as you can see, I still have some heat shrink on here. I did try to wire up so my switch LED would operate properly. Unfortunately, it drew so much power to this switch that anytime that I put my blade in, the blade would not operate. So it was draining too much power on the data side on when to turn this on and off. So I'm still working on another pin location somewhere on the board to be able to wire that other one up, because if you remember in the other video, down here on this bottom, just below my power, I had a green wire, and that green wire was for powering that light, or that LED light on there. So if you've already built one of these and you know where I can wire that up, please leave me a comment down below on which port you've wired to, so that way I can get that light to work. That's the LED on the switch, because it would be a nice feature to be able to have on there, to be able to, when I hit the power button, I know it comes on and it goes off. I just haven't been able to figure out exactly where to put that at yet. I'm still working on it. So with my PCB on here, mine's a little different because, as you can see, I do have the accents on here. Now, I did see somebody that had commented on one of the Facebook groups asked a question. Can you put a battle blade or a heavy dueling blade on one of these lightsabers and be able to duel heavily with them and still have lighting? If you're going to use a NeoPixel blade, you do not want a heavy duel with these. You don't even really want to do any light dueling. The main reason behind that is you start dueling, you're going to break the LEDs possibly inside your blade, and when you do that, your blade's screwed up. You're done. You're going to have your blade rebuilt. You're going to have to be able to fix that. However, if you are going to use a hollow or a blade for a baselit, that's why I really like this particular setup here, as far as this design PCB and pogo pin set, because I have the ability to have all of the LEDs baselit as well as the pogo pins to be able to operate my blade. Makes it really nice to be able to, as you're building it, know if in fact your blade or your system is working properly. If you get lights on there, you'll know if your pogo pin PCB is actually wired properly at that point. I got this one here. I'll have to double check the location, but I know in the parts file that I have linked down in the description below, I have the link directly to where I purchased this. It came pre-wired, but as you can see, I did have to go and do some changes on there. So if you're comfortable with soldering and you go on the website where I purchased this one from, and I believe it was from Saber Bay. I believe I got it through their Etsy page, if I'm not mistaken. You can get it pre-wired. You can get it where it's not pre-wired, where you can go in and actually build it from scratch, adding your own pogo pins, short or long, whatever you want to do. I just figured for me it was easier just to go ahead and get it pre-wired, set up and ready to go, so that way all of it was done. I didn't have to worry about whether or not I wired it properly, or where it's at. I didn't have to add the pogo pins myself. Everything was already there, so I went ahead and did that. Now I did shorten these wires up, as you can see, and then added a single wire of a larger gauge. I believe these are 28, and I believe these are actually like 26. If I'm not mistaken, as far as the wire size that I got. These may be 30 and 26. I don't remember for sure. But I wanted to make sure I had enough for current to be able to go through there, so that's why I used the larger when I went ahead and connected these together. But I do believe it's 28 and 26, or 28 and 24. So you got your battery back here on the back side, and then your speakers. Now I did not like the way my speaker was kind of bouncing around back inside here, so I actually used a piece of shrink boot, the heat shrink tubing that I have, kind of stuffed in there behind the speaker. Gave it some cushion, made it where it wouldn't move around, wouldn't slide around. It actually worked out really well, so that was the reason why I did it that way. So we'll go ahead and get this all put back together, and in the next video you'll see exactly how this all works. So I will say at this time, thanks for joining me. I do appreciate you guys taking the time to come and visit and see how exactly this build is going along. Don't forget, hit that notification bell, like and subscribe down here in the corner, so that way it helps the channel out. I know that I'm doing a good job for you guys. And then, of course, share the video to your friends, share the channel to any friends and Star Wars fans and lightsaber enthusiasts that you may know, so that we can continue to build the channel further. Don't forget also, right across the bottom down here, all of our socials. That's where all the information goes first, as far as updates of when videos are going to come out, just like this one. So make sure you follow us there on those to be able to get the most up-to-date information. So I'll say thank you again for joining me, and as always, may the Force be with you.